This is my mama, Verma Ellington. She was born in 1927. And so you could sort of figure out how old she is from that. But she will be 91 next month. And did you want to come in? Okay. And y'all have been studying about the Great Depression, and Mama lived through that time. So she's going to share with you as y'all ask her questions, and she's going to share a little bit about her life. And she has an amazing memory. So she can tell you pretty much in detail what it was like to live her life and grow up back then. Do you want to start with some questions, or do you want Mama to tell? You want to just tell them a little bit, Mama, about where you were born?
Wherever y'all want me to start.
Why don't you tell them where you were born?
Washington County, about 3 miles out in the country from Tennille, Georgia, middle Georgia.
Any of y'all know where that is?
I brought a map to show them.
Oh, good, good.
Basically, this is an old map, but I marked it where Walton County and where.
All right, Walton County is the blue dot, and the pink dot is where she was born. Y'all pass that around.
Is it near like Macon or Wrightsville?
It's about 100 and something miles from Macon. I went to work in Macon after I finished school.
But it is near Wrightsville.
Wrightsville.
Okay. Well, Mama, let's see. Where were you as far as children born? Were you like the oldest, youngest?
I was the first one.
And so she was the first out of how many children?
Well, basically, I grew up with 3. In the year I graduated from high school, which was 1944, my brother was born, the only brother I have. So I'm like a few days being 17 years older than him.
Because when Mama went to school, they graduated after the 11th grade. And so when she graduated from high school, she went to work. Now, let's see, Mama, did you grow up in town or out in the country?
Always out in the country. And we moved about every 2 or 3 years because my daddy was a sharecropper. And does any of you realize what sharecropper means? Rose does, because I told her.
And Hunter, what you do?
Yeah.
What was a sharecropper?
A sharecropper was when you were allowed to grow crops on someone else's land, and you paid, I think.
And you divided it in the fall, and you didn't have any money until that crop was made, and you divided with the landowner.
And Mama, during the Depression one time at the end of the season, I think y'all were living on a doctor's land. Y'all didn't get your share, did you?
No, that was 1930. Let me see, I was in the 6th grade. He came around along about, I guess, July, August. It was about time to gather the cotton, which August was usually cotton time, and told everybody on the different farms, there was about 20 on his land, families, and that he was taking it all back. Now, to this day, I don't know how Daddy fed us, other than if he could pick up a job on somebody else's farm, he'd go. And I remember in that fall we picked velvet beans. Nobody around here knows what velvet beans is. It's a bean about so long, and it's fuzzy like velvet, and would sting you, get in your clothes, and you'd itched.
And now we consider it a weed. Most people have
No. It's
that isn't the one that everybody pulls up.
I've read books on it, but I can't remember now. They use it for something else. It's not grown around here now.
Okay.
And that winter we moved again, and from there, let's see, I went to Tennille through the 3rd grade, went to Harrison School through the 6th grade. While I was in the 7th grade, and that was when the doctor took the stuff back, I was in the 7th grade, we moved again and I started school in Wrightsville. So I finished from January the 1st of the 7th grade, and then the 4 years of high school in Wrightsville. And let's see, and along about, I was in the 9th grade, we'd moved again. And at that time where we moved, there was a school nearby that taught through the 9th grade, and my 2 sisters had to go to it. But Daddy went to the superintendent of the county school superintendent and got permission for me to ride the bus into Wrightsville, because you could get off with these other buses and get on one bus, and all the high school, 10th and 11th grade, would go into Wrightsville. So I wound up all 4 years in high school in Wrightsville.
Well, see, a lot of kids would have just probably dropped out around ninth grade and stay and work on the farm.
And another thing, there were no paved roads. All these school buses, not just mine, but all of them for the whole school and everybody's, was on dirt roads. And the senior year, I think our pictures for the senior year was made in March, right close to my birthday. And the bus driver was sick, so he had a 11th grade boy, which he couldn't have been more than 16, 17, because I don't think he ever failed a grade either. He drove the bus, and just about 3 miles before we got to the school, I don't know what happened. He ran off in the ditch. And I wound up with a knot on my head, but it didn't show in my senior picture. And nobody got hurt, really. And we walked those 3 miles into school. And somebody else got the bus later, but... So, I don't know what else to...
Well, they have some questions. So
Everybody's got their question.
all right, who wants to go first?
Sure, Rose, go ahead.
Did you eat at least 3 meals a day, or did you have a meal every day?
I was lucky. And my daddy being a farmer, my mama canned everything possible in the fall or whenever something could be canned. And we always had food. It might not be nothing but peas and cornbread, or turnips and cornbread, or whatever they could raise at the particular time. They always had a garden. And we did have a cow, and we had milk. When I'm not sure how many knows anything about a cow, but at certain times of the year, the cow goes dry, and you might not have milk. And we usually had one hog that Daddy would kill in the wintertime, and there was no electricity, no refrigeration, and that hog was killed on the coldest day he could find. And that would be the meat we'd have, and in the summertime you didn't have any meat, you know.
And how about your school lunch? What did you take to school for lunch? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what
I'm
do you want?
sorry. Was that your question?
What did you take to school for lunch?
Yeah. Well, the best I can remember, I can't remember what I took in the lower grades, but on up in the higher grades, along about your age, I suppose, I was taking saltine crackers with peanut butter. Now, my husband told the story. He was 2 years older than me, not in that area, but he lived out in the country, and he said he would take ham and biscuit, and he would swap with the city guys to get rid of ham and biscuit and get something else. I never did do that, but...
And there was another question. Oh, you talked about that you didn't have electricity. How about water?
Well, it was well watered. Anybody know what well water is? And drawing it, not pumped, drawing it with a bucket, yeah. And even washing clothes, you had to draw all the water to wash the clothes, and you wash clothes outside in the cold weather. And if you had anything that needed to be like Daddy's work clothes or something, he would boil them in a pot and then rinse them off. Sometimes when you hung them on the line, it would freeze. So what else?
I have a question about the well. Is that well kind of like the one that's up in North Carolina at the cabin? That like well out in the yard there? Is that
Well, the well, yeah,
It looked sort of like
yeah.
that.
that
But
kind of,
Now, we never did have brick or anything around it like you're talking about. Ours was just a wood frame around it.
the same thing?
But you had to draw water to water the pigs or cows or mule to get no difference between mule and horse.
and Mama, tell them, because you know here we're always so big on they got to wash their hands, got to wash their hands. How did y'all, like if you came in to get a drink of water or wash your hands, tell them how it was set up.
There was always like a little table or something, and there'd be a bucket of water there and a
So
we
like
call
a-
it a wash pan,
Yeah.
a pan that you wash your hands in, and then there was a towel hanging over here. and not the kind of towels y'all are used to. Would be a fertilizer sack or whatever they could find.
And then the dipper?
Oh yeah, there was a dipper to get the water out of the bucket over into you. Well, you drank out of the dipper too. We
And
drank
everybody
we
drank
drank
out of the same dipper.
Kind
Yeah.
of like a ladle, like you see, you get soup or something out of it, that's when we're talking about a dipper, that's what they're talking about. And everybody that came that wanted to drink would just use the dipper. There wasn't-
And if they didn't want to do that, then the mom would find a glass and let them have a glass, but like company or something, you know. But usually the family just drank after each other. But
Lydia, do you have a question?
Did you have a certain place that you would go to when things got really bad?
Like, did you have a private place you go when things were getting on your nerves or bothering you?
no, I never did have nerves.
Didn't have time for that.
No.
And Mama also was the oldest, so she was, one of her aunts told me one time that Mama was sort of born a grown-up because from the time she was little, she had to help take care of the younger children.
Yeah, because
and,
I was just 2 years old in the next one.
and Grandmama helped Grandpapa out in the fields and stuff, so Mama would be expected like to cook and sew.
And by the time I was as big as these kids, I was following a plow, helping my daddy plow.
And tell them how old you were the first time you made a dress.
12. Wore it to church. Of course, it was a country church, but it was, made it. Anybody else got?
Go ahead.
Did you have any hobbies? Like,
Oh yeah, sewing. Sewing was my hobby. That's the reason I could make a dress at 12 years old. And it wasn't like the sewing machines like you see now. It was the kind that you put your feet on it and you pedaled it. Okay, with that.
Did any of your family members die of starvation, thirst, or any other causes caused by the Great Depression?
Like, do you know of any that had no food?
No. Because my daddy was from a family of 10, and there was about 5 or 6 of them lived in the general area, and everybody that I knew of, they either got at least 1 or 2 meals a day, so I never knew of anybody really going that hungry.
Helps when you're in the farming. Because
Oh
you
yeah,
put
they
up-
were all
put up
farmers.
things, so that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're in the city, it's a little different because you don't have any way to have food around.
And see, like when I was saying I started at school, the first 3 years, I was like 3 miles out in the country, but by the time I was in high school, we were about 8 miles out in the country. And you were ready for that bus, because that bus did not wait on you before it wouldn't even be light in the wintertime. And get back home about 4:15, 4:30. And I started the school in 1933. And that first school bus was a wooden body, wooden benches down the center and on each side. Let me see, anything else?
Oh yeah, they've got some questions. Megan?
How many outfits did you have?
I mean, what?
Outfits.
Different clothes.
Oh dear. I was lucky to have maybe 3 during school time anyway.
And shoes, how many pair of shoes would you have had?
1 pair for the winter, 1 pair for the summer maybe. And I don't know that we actually had any for the summer. Well, I guess we did because we wore some to church.
I had church shoes at rest.
Well, they would, back then they were just what I'd call loafers now or something. You know, it wasn't nothing fancy.
Right.
Never did have that pretty patent leather.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that back then.
Couldn't afford that.
No,
I can remember the first winter coat that was bought for me. I was in the 7th grade. Now, what kind of coat I wore before that, I guess Mama made it. I don't remember. But Daddy had a good crop that year, and they bought all 3 of us a winter coat. And that was something else. Y'all don't know what Sears Roebuck catalog is either. Everything was ordered from Sears Roebuck catalog.
Sort of like Amazon now.
Well, it's, yeah. Well, kind of like Walmart in a book.
Yeah.
Because I think it was Mama told the story about the first car she ever saw. that they had ordered it from Sears. I know you could order cars from Sears at some time. I never
Just
did.
about everything from Sears and Roebuck in that catalog.
By the time I can remember, they weren't doing that, but
Just a minute, honey, before you start. Mama, since you were talking about the bus, tell them about the time your daddy told the bus driver to stop and let you do something for the family, because you'd never see this happen nowadays.
well, I was shy, and I don't know. I was probably in the 2nd grade, and I don't remember what it was. He had told the bus driver to let me stop at this grocery store in Tennille. I was in Tennille at that time, and go in and get whatever it was. It must have been something they really needed for him to do that, because I'd never known him to do it after that. But I did. I got brave enough to go in the grocery store and get whatever it was. But
And the bus waited on her, and then everybody on the bus sat and waited on her, and then
and there wasn't any money, so it was a store that I'm sure that was where he shopped for groceries, and they knew to let it be on Daddy's account, because I had to tell them who I was. They didn't know who I was. But
You pay later.
Well, that was-
especially with farmers
well,
waiting for the
that was the way
crops.
sharecroppers worked. I mean,
Because they had their money like come in after the crop, so.
yeah.
Mama
Now, we
lived out
lived
in
in
the country,
shacks.
yeah.
We lived in shacks ourselves, but individually through the area.
And there were shacks. They were not.
I've got a picture here to show y'all something about what it looked like.
And this is log. When she passed this around, this is a family reunion here of the family, and you can see this is logs in the house, and I want you to notice that there's some gaps between those logs. And you think about some of these nights.
And there was no glass windows. They were shutters like a door. And in the summertime, there was no screens, let in all the flies and all the gnats and mosquitoes, whatever. These were some school pictures. I wondered if they remembered when y'all were in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades. These are the kind of pictures they made back then.
Y'all remember being in lower elementary, right? 1st, 2nd, 3rd? That's not too far back for you guys. You should be able to remember that. And see, they even did group pictures back.
Well, that's the only kind they did. They didn't do them individually.
They did group class pictures for back then. They would pass them back.
Chris, y'all be
Pretty good
careful with
sized
those.
class, actually. Was that
Oh, yeah,
classes together?
yeah, that was the whole class. And the 2nd grade picture with this, 2nd and 3rd was together.
Uh-huh.
But my 1st grade was just one class, and the 3rd grade was one class. But you averaged 25 to 30 in the class. You know.
I know my dad said he went to, because he'll be 92 this year.
Oh,
So
really?
He was born in 26. And he said that he had 1st through 4th grade, it was a 2-story, because he was up in Pennsylvania, but he said the 1st through 4th grade met in the bottom, and when you, 5th and 6th grade, or 5th, I guess 4th through 8th were upstairs. And after 8th, you went off to high school somewhere. A lot of kids didn't go on past
No.
8th. You graduate, they had an 8th grade graduation, but he said the teachers, one teacher for each floor, and for those grades, and they pay attention. You went up and she taught that grade, and the rest of them were doing work back there.
Yeah.
They didn't interfere.
Well, we've shared the same room in that 2nd and 3rd grade. One sat on one side, one on the other, and one would do work while she was over here, you know.
Right,
So
yeah.
like what we do with our 2nd and 3rd grade.
But
Did anybody else, Cheyenne and Hunter, y'all think y'all each had a question, didn't you?
Yeah. We already asked them.
Have both of you asked your question? Hunter, you had another one, didn't you? Okay.
It was about the catalog. Didn't they used to call them wish books?
yeah, the catalog, Sears
Yeah.
catalog, yeah, that was a wish book. Especially, they'd send out a Christmas edition, and that's what you wrote through to find your ask for Christmas.
Keith, did you ask your question?
What was your process of getting light in your house?
With lamp, with kerosene.
What was the process of lighting it and everything?
Tell them how you lit the kerosene lamp and all.
Well, does anybody know what a lamp looks like? It's hard to it's got kerosene in this bowl, and then there's a wick, they call it wick, that comes up through there. You take the shade off the globe, and you take a match and light that wick. And you had to be careful, or the fire would go back down in that kerosene, and then you'd have an explosion. But they didn't, and the area where there was no electricity there till after I had graduated from high school. And out in the country where I was at.
And if you had to study, it was about that little bitty
But
ramp.
you got your lessons before dark, or else you right up trying to see.
What did you say where you were?
Did my family live out west?
Did
Yeah.
you move out there to find a job, or y'all
Oh,
just
no,
stay
no.
around the area?
They stayed, my great-great-grandfather, as far back as I can trace, was right there in Washington County, right in that same area.
Now, there was a time your daddy, I think before he got married, he went down to South Georgia for a little bit.
It was
or-
down in Florida, but he
Okay.
didn't stay there but a few months. He decided Florida wasn't for him. He came back to Washington County.
Did he buy a tractor?
He always farmed with a mule. In fact, around in the area where I was, even in high school, I don't remember ever seeing a tractor. The tractors came popular, really popular after World War II, especially down there. Now I've heard Conrad Barnes talk about them, but like 30 models, but where I was at, I didn't see any of them.
What about your first car? Do you remember your first car?
We didn't have one.
Never
We
had-
walked or went in a buggy or wagon, and I don't know whether anybody knows what a buggy is. Or I guess they might know what a wagon is, but a buggy is pulled by one mule or one horse. And Daddy did most of the grocery shopping because, like I said, we always lived so far out in the country. He went in and bought what had to be bought. And rarely Mama ever went in.
How did you entertain yourselves? Because today you've got computers and TV and everything, so how did you?
We had no radio, no TV, no lights, no nothing. If it was warm enough, we'd get out on the steps and we'd pretend to play piano, or we'd draw something in the yard, because back then they didn't have grass like they do now. You swept your yards with it, not a house broom, but a yard broom. And we'd draw and play hopscotch, or let me see, I was trying to think if there was something else we'd play.
Jacks?
Yeah, I remember jacks after I got on up older.
I don't know if y'all even know what jacks are, but
It's like
they're.
a little ball in the.
It has a little ball and you bounce it into the little metal.
Yeah. And see, I didn't have a brother, so we didn't have marbles to play with. The boys out at school, I remember they would play with marbles a lot, but I didn't have a brother, so at that time.
Do any of y'all remember when we went on that field trip at the beginning of the year, they told us why they swept the yards? Do y'all remember why they said they swept the yard? Keep fire away from the house. They didn't want debris around your house because if a fire started, it burned down. There wasn't a fire department to come put out the fire. It also kept away snakes and rats and stuff like that. So that's the reason they swept and kept it clean around the house.
And I can't remember now which house or how old it was. I remember Mama talking about there would be cracks between the boards where you could see the chickens under the house. And the houses were not pinned up like they are nowadays. I remember crawling under there and playing. And
Bet you had a lot of eggs for breakfast, didn't you?
we had eggs, but we had grits and biscuits more than we had eggs. We lived off of grits and biscuits.
Anybody hadn't asked their question? Paris?
When did things start to become easier for your family?
I'm sorry, what?
When did things get easier for the family?
After I went to work in Macon, when I graduated from high school, this lady had come from Macon interviewing for a telephone company. And back then, the telephones wasn't like they are now. And she interviewed me, and we didn't even have a telephone in the high school that we could use. So she carried us to the county agent office downtown, and it was a little town. And we called from there to another office downtown. And she said I had a good speaking voice and I got the job. Nobody else that she interviewed
Had you ever talked to a telephone
never
before?
knew what a telephone was.
She didn't even know what a telephone was, and the woman came, and she interviewed. Now, think about that, and then tell them about getting the job, what the woman told you then, that when she said you had a good speaking voice and she was going to hire you.
Well, I had to wait. I didn't get the letter for about 6 weeks. But anyway, I don't remember what you're talking about.
But she told you the address and the taxi and all.
Oh, yeah. Well, Daddy carried me to Wrightsville to the bus, and it stopped at a drugstore right in the corner center of town. He put me on the bus. She had given me this address where to get off in Macon. I mean, to give the taxi. Well, I didn't know what a taxi was, but I got a taxi, and she had given me the address, and they took me there. And from there, we lived in what they called a dormitory. There was like 50-something girls that worked with telephone company. And from there, they began to help me get through everything.
Now, how much money, she told you you needed to have some money with you to pay the taxi. I want to say it was a quarter or something.
Probably so. Daddy got whatever I needed. But the first paycheck I got was only for a week's work. We got paid every week, and it was $17 for a whole week's work.
And then Mama sent a good bit of her money home to support the rest of the family. So that's why our family started doing better when she got a job.
Yeah, because immediately, and this was right after, well, it was during the war actually, but anyway, you could buy what they called U.S. savings bond. And every week or every time I could save up enough, I'd buy a U.S. savings bond, because my sister was 2 years younger than me, and she was a little brighter in school than I was, and she wanted to go to college. So I'd help her help Mom and Daddy to save up money for her, and she went to Martha Berry and worked, plus us helping her, and got her college education. But and another thing, y'all need to stay in school. School is very important. I had 2 years of schooling that I didn't miss a day from school, even though school was the most important to Mom and Daddy. They wanted us to have a better chance than they did. And then I worked. By the time I retired, I had 20 years of perfect attendance. So it's very important.
And how many girls were in a room in your dormitory where you stayed?
Four.
So 4 of them lived in a room. How many of y'all shared a bathroom?
Well, the 6 shared a bathroom because it eventually apparently had been an apartment house or something, because there was a smaller room and a larger room. I was in the larger room, but the 4 in the larger room and the 2 in the smaller room shared the same bathroom.
And how long did you live?
I lived
like that?
3 years, a little over 3 years like that.
And do you remember anybody ever arguing or getting in a fight or anything?
No. There was a curfew, not curfew, there was a house mother that lived with us there. She had her own apartment, and I guess you'd call it a curfew. Anyway, we were supposed to be in by midnight, unless you had a really important or something drastic had happened. But if you knew you were going to be out, say for instance, if you went home and knew the bus wasn't going to get back before midnight, you could ask her permission to come in after midnight, and she'd unlock the front door and let you in. So,
You were probably raised without a bathroom too, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
No bathroom.
No bathroom.
Running water, so.
No running water, no. In the summertime, you get the wash tub, of what we call them, a galvanized tub. You could take a bath in the galvanized tub in the summertime, but you didn't do it in the wintertime.
But you didn't do it every day?
No, not every day.
Usually Saturday night before church?
Well, probably. I don't remember, but I'm sure we didn't do it every day, because by the time we got in from the field and eat supper, you were tired, you were ready to go to bed.
Well, what was a typical day like?
Well, let's see. This is when I'm in high school. I'm remembering more of that. You get up, like going to school, you get up and be ready to get on that bus, and you spend your day at school. You come in and you change clothes in a hurry. You didn't drag around like. You got your clothes changed, and if you had an hour to go to the field, help pick cotton or whatever that they needed you to do. If it wasn't that, you fed the hogs or did the cow. Now, I started milking the cow when I was probably about as big as these kids. Because I remember I think I was in the seventh grade. Mama and Daddy and the other 2 kids had flu, and I was the only one that didn't have the flu. I got up and milked that cow, got ready, and caught the school bus and went to school. And then when I come home, I had to do whatever else that had to be done. That child's got one back. What you want?
Cheyenne.
Did you have any really bad disasters that happened at your house?
Any bad disasters?
No, Fortunately, we were lucky. We were lucky.
Chris?
What did you eat most of the time?
What did we eat?
Eat,
Most,
yeah.
as I said, grits and biscuit and maybe a vegetable and cornbread. Rarely we had any meat. And Mama was not a great cake baker or anything like that, so we didn't have money to buy sugar and stuff to make them, for one thing. And in the summertime, you'd have watermelon, cantaloupe, and some of the best tomatoes you ever ate. I miss that today more than anything.
Gavin, did you have a question? Or did yours get asked?
I'll ask.
Okay.
What job did you have, and how much money did you make?
The telephone operator, and you sort of answered that,
Yeah.
that you made $17 a week.
Yeah, I made the first paycheck I drew was $17. And you probably don't know what have you ever seen an old timey telephone or seen pictures of them?
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Well, when I went to work, see, there was what they called it blackboard, but it was a board and it had these little holes, and down here you had all these cords, and you'd see a light come on up here on this board, and you'd pick up this cord and plug it in, and you'd say, I've forgotten, now what did I say? Anyway, you answer that light, and they say, well, I want 297, you take another cord and connect it to 297.
And it's funny because the telephone operators did a lot of controlling sort of the town. Like we had a person in Fort Valley we sort of referred to as the town crazy woman. And if she got to cussing and all on the telephone, they'd unplug her. So.
Was $17 considered a lot?
No, it wasn't considered a lot, but it was an average.
That was a good job, yeah.
Yeah, it was an
That
average.
pretty good money for.
In 1947, and I did join the union. I had joined it before that, but in 1947 there was a strike, and we were out of work about 3 weeks, I think it was. And we got a better pay raise then once that strike was over.
And Mama walked a picket line.
Oh, yeah.
Daddy used to laugh about that. He picked her up for one of their dates. She was walking the picket line when he went to pick her up. And that's probably not anything around here y'all have seen, but in other parts of the country that was pretty common.
All right, this child back here's got one. What you want, huh?
How much did food usually cost?
How much is what?
The food. Can you remember how much a loaf of bread was and stuff
Well,
like
we didn't buy bread, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Made cornbread.
Gosh, because y'all bought mainly flour and I guess stuff like that.
Yeah, and Daddy had corn, so he'd have the cornmeal ground from the corn, but it did buy flour. You know what? I don't know, honey. I don't.
Because on the farm, a lot of times, like she said, we're fairly self-sufficient. They put up their vegetables, they canned them themselves.
And Daddy grew cane, and in the wintertime, fall, we'd cut this cane down, and there was a neighbor that had what they called a cane mill. He'd carry it there, and it would be ground and made syrup, cooked down to syrup. And we always had a patch of peanuts, and we would gather peanuts and let them dry. And then a lot of times we would take those peanuts and boil down this syrup and make peanut brittle. That was our candy.
And she was talking about the corn. They would grow corn, and then if you let it dry, then you can take it to the corn meal or
Yeah,
the mill, and they grind
Yeah.
it, and that's what you make your cornbread and everything
Yeah,
out of.
mhm.
So you wouldn't have to go to the store and buy that. That's something that you would.
And nowadays,
basically
most of the meal you see says self-rising, and I was one. And it would be what they call plain meal, and Mama mixed it up with water, and you had a griddle. Y'all know what a griddle is? And fry these little daisy cornbread things. It was
best.
good. It was good. What?
So was the cornmeal pretty much flour?
Mm-mm.
No, it's cornmeal.
Yeah,
corn.
flour comes from
Or is
wheat.
it like flour?
Well, it's
a
not.
lot coarser.
It's not all that much coarser, but it is coarser than flour. And
It's made from corn instead of wheat. It's just, you make bread out of it.
God, that.
Yeah, it's used simply.
And for milk, it was always Mama would strain it and put it in a pan, and the cream would rise, and then she'd take the cream off and put it in a jar and save it up, and then you sit there and shake it until you make butter, and that was your butter. You didn't even buy butter.
Did you use one of those butter churner things?
She had one. If we had enough, she did use that, but I've sat by the stove and rocked that jar many a time.
Just have to be shaken.
Cheyenne?
Did you sell any of your food?
No, we never sold it. Well, I'll take that back. And while I was in high school, Daddy did grow enough watermelons. He would take watermelons into town and sell them, but that was the only thing I can ever remember him selling.
And I guess maybe a little bit of syrup after I was born even. Seems like people would buy the syrup from him. No?
He'd give you Granddaddy Ellington what it was
Okay.
that they didn't use because he didn't have any. And Mr. Ellington loved it too, and they didn't have it, so Daddy would share with him. But
During World War II, did you help in any way, like scrapping or Victory Garden or something like that?
no, but during World War II, I was like in the 9th and 10th grade, and we had to train on marching out on the school ground, afraid we was going to have to go to service.
So they would teach them all how to march, so in case they all had to go to war.
Even the women, we talked about that a little bit earlier today about if women would have to go, so everybody had to go practice.
Yeah. And see, my husband, of course, I didn't know him back then. He had already served 3 years when I met him, but he went straight, he'd finished in 1942, and he went straight into the Army, served 3 years, and come out.
Was he like injured in the war?
No, he was lucky. He had 2 brothers that was in there, and out of the 3, neither one of them was injured, so they were lucky.
And did everybody ask their questions? Okay. Okay.
Do you remember first electricity?
Well, not at Mom and Daddy's because they didn't have it until, it was after you come along.
Yeah, I remember.
Of course, I knew about it at school in town and all, but in working in Macon, I knew about it. But Mom and Daddy didn't even have a bathroom until 1960.
I was in the 9th grade, I think, when they got running water, because I think Grandpa had already died. And that was the reason y'all put running water in, is because you didn't want Grandmama going out drawing water into the outhouse.
Yeah, he would put that in, and that was long about the time he graduated from high school. So we were poor people. Poor people. But
So were a lot of people. I mean, it wasn't like they were the only one. The majority of people were. A lot
yeah,
of people.
especially in that section of the country.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were the only ones. There was a lot of people around, and like she said, especially in that area, where there were sharecroppers, farmers, and things like that. That was just kind of more normal.
That was.
And remember, Mr. Queen told y'all he didn't know he was poor till somebody bought him a Coke, and he realized, and I want to say he was 7th grade the first time he said he had the Coke, and realized he was poor.
Well, I didn't ever think about it, but when we moved where I could go to school in Wrightsville, there was across the street, there was a little country store, and you could go across there and buy a Coke for a nickel. I never did have a nickel to buy one, but some of them did. Let's see.
Do you remember the first time you had like a soda, like a Coke or something like that?
No, I don't really remember.
How about what you got for Christmas? What would you get for Christmas?
Oh dear, that was something else I was going to bring. I was going to bring them, show them my doll, my last doll. They wouldn't believe it. Oh, if you got a doll, for us, of course, girls, we got dolls, and you'd get, and I don't know that they would even know what stick candy is now, but it was be a stick of candy, peppermint. Rose knows what peppermint is because she loves peppermint. But it could be different. It could be lemon or peppermint or different kind. And Daddy loved these raisins that was dried on the stem. You can't buy them now. But he loved that, and there would be some of those, and maybe an orange and an apple. And that was about it. And instead of stockings, we used a shoebox, and each one have a name on the shoebox and set it around the fireplace for Santa Claus. And let's see, my younger sister was born in 1932, and she was born in September, and I guess my other sister had gotten a doll that Christmas at the end of 32, and then that summer, Mama's garden, she had left the doll in the garden, and overnight it either rained or dew, I don't remember what, but the doll got ruined. And then she had to wait till the next Christmas before she got another doll.
Might learn to take care of things.
After you married, do you remember when you got air conditioning?
Oh, yeah. And let's see, we bought our first house in 1950. We did have central heat, but it was from it wasn't
It's like
gas.
an oil furnace.
It was
or
an oil
something.
furnace, like the tank set behind the house. And then in the summertime, we used a window fan, and it was we sold that house in 1961. And I think we got the first air conditioning, and it was a window unit then. And then later, we had the house central aired, the one I sold when he died. We had it central aired and heat.
My daddy liked toys because I think we had the first house. I remember even the window unit in. I know we had the first TV in the neighborhood because the kids would come over to see our TV, and we had the first dishwasher I ever saw. And everybody, and I mean, we lived in a modest house, but he did like those toys.
Well, and I was still working with the telephone company, and he was working with the post office, and we did not spend money unless it was absolutely necessary, other than he smoked and he's bleeding his cigarettes. But we could have had a lot more money if he hadn't smoked. One time I went, and I loved to sew, and after we got the first house, the first Christmas, he bought me a real nice electric sewing machine. And then years later, I went back and bought another one and surprised him that afternoon when he come in. I'd gone to make and bought me another sewing machine. Come in and he said, "What are you doing that for?" I said, "You still smoking? I'm spending my money the way I want to." But
Anything else? Or?
Pretty well covers it.
Okay.
Yes. We just appreciate you coming in and sharing with us, because we've been studying it, but that's not as good as hearing someone
Yeah.
that actually lived it and went through that time.
yeah, I had jotted this down because Rita had ordered a couple of years ago the Washington County historical book for me, because I told her, I said, if you ever see one, I want one. So she'd found it on that Amazon or whatever.
Yeah, the Amazon.
And I had sat there and read it. She asked me this, and in that it said, like in Tyndall and Sandersville, it was 1929 before they had a paved street. And let's see, the banks, what am I? Anyway, in 1929, the banks closed the doors too. And how many are up on your math? If you got 10% of the money that you had in the bank, say if you had $100 in there, how much would you get off 10%?
$10.
Yep.
Yay! They've been working on percentages, so I can see those little wheels turning.
And then along about, and let's see, the market had crashed. Then that caused the depression. By the middle of the 1930s, when it began to kind of come back. And see, that would have made me like 6, 7 years old, and also 1927 was the first, well, it was 27 the first paved streets. 29 was when the banks closed. And another thing I found in there said that the boys during that early 30s, they could get a haircut for 25 cents. I bet you couldn't get one for 25 cents. And the first permanent, that was something else. I loved to mess with my hair. And for Christmas, when I was 12 years old, that was my Christmas present. And Daddy took me all the way into Wrightsville, which was about 8 miles, early that morning. And how he knew where to take me, I don't know. But I got a permanent. That was my Christmas. And back then, they rode your hair on these little rods, and you had all these cords going to one central heating thing, and you sit under it. I can't remember, maybe an hour or something. I don't even know how long you sit under it. It took me pretty much all day to get the permanent. But, and from then on, I learned how to order home waves from Sears Roebuck catalog and put them in myself. And put them in my sister's hair, because Mom and none of my sisters had any idea what to do with hair. Even after Daddy got feeble before he passed away, I went down there one weekend and he needed a haircut. He said, but I don't feel like going into town. I said, well, if you trust me, I'll cut it. So I cut it for him. It wasn't the best of haircuts, but it was nothing. And
We all have to remember, they didn't have a car to just go 8 miles, so how long in the buggy would it take you to go into town?
And I can't remember, probably pretty close to an hour.
Just to go, say from here to Loganville, it would take about an hour with the buggy.
Yeah.
So it
And
wasn't
you,
like you just jumped in the car and rode up there in 5 minutes, you were there.
and then while I was in high school, I remember we had I guess a flash flood like something. It rained a lot, and between our house and into Wrightsville, there was what they called, it was a creek, and there was a wood bridge. It wasn't no cement like they are nowadays. It was a wood bridge, and the mail carrier had to cross that before it could get to our side of the county. And this man that lived close to that bridge walked across that bridge and made sure that bridge was safe for that mail carrier to cross it. And
So, if they didn't get washed out.
yeah. But he was taking, I never did learn to swim. He was taking his life in his hands to walk across that bridge to check it out for that postman to mail carry it. Yeah.
Okay, Rose, last question. We'll wrap it up.
How long was the bridge?
It was probably about the length of this room. It was fairly.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. Really appreciate
I've
it.
got a lot more sad stuff. They just don't deal with the depression.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay, thank you very much.
you got all the pictures.